Ground against Pakistan, hitting 11 air bases in 25 minutes. India now is on an information blitzkrieg. Shunning its old reticent ways of the past, thinking the world would naturally support the right thing and the truth, today India is making it clear that it will use all information in its kitty to humiliate Pakistan for its ignominy, the way it suffered at the hands of the Indian armed forces. Pakistan tried to deny it, Americans tried to equate India and Pakistan, and international media agencies became useful tools to promote all lies and propaganda to save face for Pakistan. But armed with facts and high-resolution images, support of global war experts, India now has stamped its military authority around the world. This is a message to Pakistan and allies' propaganda machine, but also to world powers that India's defense is second to none, and we don't need to depend on you for our progress. Some may hold trade considerations as a carrot and stick, but once it comes to national interests, those tricks have no effect. Besides, for their own national self-interest, India knows they will have to do business with India. Speaking of business, is it time India also rethinks its hand of friendship to some countries? We discuss that and more with our guests in just a bit. First up, Turkey's stand recently has been specially eye-opening. Because supplying arms to a country like Pakistan against India is one thing, but Turkey openly batted for Pakistan during this recent conflict. So while India did Operation Sindoor, Pakistan used Turkish drones to attack India. While India set up a field hospital for Turkey in its hour of need, Turkey docked its warship in Karachi to support Pakistan. While India sent medical teams essential equipment after the earthquake in 2023, Turkey called India's action against terror in Pakistan a provocation. This is not new. Turkey has been at it for a while. It has done this in the past, portrayed India as an occupier in Kashmir, for example, alleged human rights violation by Indian forces, given platform to separatist voices against India on its global media platforms, justified terrorism in the name of a freedom struggle that's an old playbook. It has even portrayed policies like CAA, NRC as anti-Muslim when these are just policies that any nation will have to govern itself. And it has backed Pakistan's nuclear threat against India. There have been calls to boycott travel to countries like Turkey and Azerbaijan by Indian tourists and even traders for goods traded between the two. This after these countries supported Pakistan amidst the current hostilities. As a result, many Indian travelers are cancelling their trips, leading to significant drop in bookings. Ixigo, which is a travel agency, has said that when it comes to Bharat, they don't think twice. Ease My Trip says, we strongly recommend visiting these countries only if absolutely necessary. Cox & Kings says sometimes a pause becomes a necessity. Travo Mint has decided to support call for boycotting Turkey and Azerbaijan as well. Go Homestays has announced that they will officially end their partnership with Turkish Airlines. Goa Villas is another company that books homestays and such, says we will not offer any accommodation services to Turkish citizens. Pick Your Trail also echoed that when national interest is at stake, we stand with India. So, after busting Pakistan's lies and all of the propaganda that it has been peddling against India and India's armed forces, is it also time to go cold turkey as far as certain other friendly countries are concerned? And does India need stronger action when it comes to these propaganda machines that are state propaganda machines of other countries? That's coming up.
जब तक टर्की पाकिस्तान का सपोर्ट कर रहा है तब तक हम उसको टर्की से जो आने वाले माल को हम स्वेच्छा से हम इंपोर्ट नहीं करेंगे।
जो देश भारत के खिलाफ खड़ा होगा, भारत का व्यापारी कभी ना उसको सपोर्ट करेगा ना उसको समर्थन करेगा।
तो अब समय आ गया है कि हम अगर अपनी टूरिज्म एक्टिविटी भी चूज करें, हम ऐसे देशों के साथ करें जो हमें मजबूत बनाते हैं, जो हमारा ही कमाए हुए पैसों से आतंकवाद दूसरे देशों से हमारे खिलाफ नहीं करते।
Let's go across to our guest joining us, Tarakarta, former director, NSCS. Subhash Goyal is founder, STIC Travel Group and Companies. Rajat Sethi is political analyst. Will be joined with some more guests. Thanks a lot to all of you for your time. Tarakarta, the question of Turkey. I haven't mentioned China explicitly because that's a long-standing understanding that we Indians have of how China's expansionist policies and tendencies are a danger to India. In this conflict too, China didn't, very openly badge for Pakistan, but we know where its interests lie. Turkey and some others kind of came out more explicitly. What do you think could be appropriate response from India in this regard? I know India's foreign policy doesn't like to take on countries very openly, like some others, but what do you think could be an appropriate response?
I think, actually in this, China was more restrained in its statements than Turkey.
Yes.
In fact, till the end, when there are briefings, in press briefings, they were pretty okay with this. But the fact is that Turkey has long been a kind of cat's paw for China. In various areas, in Afghanistan, when they want to take the lead, they use Turkey. So they take that route because most of the time they don't directly deal with these guys. But I just want, if you permit, I'll just bring out one aspect. Both Pakistan and Turkey are adept at taking both sides. Turkey is part of NATO. It's also part of this combine which is screaming for Palestine and doing all the Kashmir jihad, blah, blah, blah. Pakistan does the same. Both are good at playing US and Pakistan. I found this.
You mean China? You mean China, right?
Yes, China. That's right. So they are very good at that. What do we do? I've been to Turkey myself a couple of times, once on holiday, twice officially. And I can't see why on earth we should not cut off. It's easy to say cut off ties, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, last year, we had a pretty big shipping deal with Turkey, which we cancelled, perhaps for good reason. But while at this point, I would say definitely cut off all tourist trade. We don't want to go there. And I don't think Indians should go there, even in terms of safety. But you need to also think of other options down the line as you go on, because Turkey is also a NATO member.
Subhash Goyal, I want to bring you in before I discuss more diplomatic measures and just what ordinary Indians can do. Can you give me a sense of what is the response that your company, for example, has seen since the role of Turkey and Azerbaijan became very prominent?
I am also the chairman of the Aviation and Tourism Expert Committee of the Indian Chamber.
Yes.
And all the associations, trade associations, that is the Travel Agents Association of India, Indian Association of Tour Operators, Indian Association of MICE Network Agents, all the agents have issued statements and press releases to boycott Turkey and Azerbaijan. Now, why this is going to have an impact? Because Indians are the number one spenders of money in shopping in Singapore, Malaysia, Switzerland, London. So we are number one. And last year, 333,000 Indians visited Turkey and 225,000 Indians visited Azerbaijan. We spent crores and crores of rupees in foreign exchange. After this appeal, and with organizations like Ease My Trip, Cox and Kings and all, and also the outbound tour operators of India have, boycotted Turkey and Azerbaijan. So I am confident that more than 50% of the tourists going to both these countries are going to cancel their trips.
50% you may say?
More than 50%.
More than 50%.
70%, because only those who have already paid, and for them it will be a financial loss. They will carry on with the journey, but I will advise them to be careful for their security, because and I think Government of India maybe issue an advisory, because if these terrorists can come into Kashmir and kill innocent tourists in front of their eyes on the basis of their religion, I think they can do it more easily in countries like Azerbaijan and Turkey. So Indian tourists need to be careful there, number one. Number two, I think there are many countries like Mauritius, the Prime Minister immediately openly supported us.
Yeah.
Like Armenia, like Kazakhstan, like Uzbekistan. Now, all these Central Asian countries are as beautiful or probably more beautiful than both countries. And they have history, culture, and everything to offer. And it's visa on arrival in all these countries. So, why should we not go to these countries? And as it is in Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Sri Lanka, we are already sending, millions of tourists. Indian outbound tourism, which is around 25 million, is a big force to reckon with. And today, this is our soft power of India.
Okay. Just give me a moment, sir. I'm going to come back to you. Rajat Sethi has also been waiting. Rajat, the question is this. Should India do this as a government diktat, or should we allow the minds of the Indians to come together and take a natural call? Now, that's the question. What road do you think we should go down as a country?
Well, Shivani, constitutionally, government cannot mandate movement of tourists. It comes out of sheer volition and resolve as a collective. And I believe government can 100% issue advisories to our adversaries. And to that effect, if those adversaries are Turkey and other countries, so be it. 4,000 crore of money in terms of tourism, spending, etc., goes into Azerbaijan and Turkey. These are the rough approximation, which is our foreign exchange going into these countries for tourism purposes. Have we ever thought about none of these countries even recognize any part of Kashmir to be legitimate and indivisible part of India?
Yeah.
On the contrary, it is Armenia, sitting right next to Azerbaijan and in a conflict, and one of the important countries which buys Indian weapons also, and is one of the rare countries which regard all of Kashmir, including Pakistan occupied Kashmir, as our sovereign territory. Why do our tourists not go to Armenia and go to Azerbaijan and Turkey? So I think this education, this larger sentiments that are driving in our tourism is absolutely welcome.
No, once again,
we brought Maldives on the knees. You know how on the knees. You know how they were trying to flex their muscles.
Yeah.
But when we showed what our soft power is capable of doing, they had to quote our line. And I think every tool, be it hard power, soft power. Now, there is no discrimination between anything of that sort. Our strategic goals are paramount, and we will do anything that is needed.
But here's the problem, Rajat, here's the problem. You ask Indians to make certain calls when Indian government is in business with these countries. Is that fair? The question arises, if the governments continue to do business, if the Indian state doesn't show the spine to say, okay, we will suffer, Indians will suffer, but we're not going to deal with countries that deliberately arm Pakistan against India, then you can't expect this moral high ground from citizens alone. This has been said in context of Pakistan itself.
I will differentiate. There are fine lines and nuances in this as well. If somebody is selling arms, etc., there are a whole lot of people engaging in arms trade around the world. The real challenge here is that Turkey is one country which did not even come out and criticize and certainly did not agree to India's right to respond after Pahalgam attacks. That is going below the belt. These countries who do not come out and stand in solidarity with our country should be called out. And countries like Turkey, and there are others also, they have to be identified. And we have to create social pressure so that tourism does not go into Turkey or into Azerbaijan. And government will have to eventually fall in line. I mean, the same happened with Maldives. MEA kept kowtowing a line, but then once their president breached the red line, the red Rubicon on diplomacy, he had to suffer. And then he came back to India with a request to extend the credit line once again. So things can happen. You have to project your power. Power does not exist in vacuum. It has to be exerted to be realized that this country holds an enormous power, being the fourth largest economy and having 150 crore people.
Yeah, and they want the Indian market, isn't it? Tarakata, this kind of extends to what Donald Trump has been trying to say, at least. Indian government maintains that no trade was discussed as far as any communication with US officials during this entire conflict is concerned. But let's say Donald Trump is going around the world now and saying, oh, I used carrot as a stick and a carrot both. I used trade as a stick and a carrot both. The bottom line is that India needs to stand firm on this. Like, even if there were attempts to do this, or there are attempts to do this in future, we shouldn't. I hope we're not in a position where we have to buckle any more. In the past also, India has faced sanctions and so on, and we've stood firm when it comes to national interest. It shouldn't be too difficult even now.
There's no question. There's absolutely no question of this. And I think MEA has made it clear that there is not going to be, the whole Prime Minister's speech was hinged on that. No talks with terror, no, what in those three principles which he outlined. Trade, I don't know where trade even came into it. The whole trade issue is separate. And incidentally, I think just yesterday, we fired our first anti-trade salvo in the US against a US tariff line. That was just yesterday. Of course, it's part of your normal trade negotiations when whatever we said we'll have reciprocal tariffs. That's what we've done. So that is not working. What I'm trying to say about Turkey is the fact that, like Rajat said, a lot of people supply weapons to a bunch of countries, right? But I would agree with Rajat is that their position on Kashmir, their anti-India sentiment, that is what we need to. But Erdogan is not Turkey. I think we should make that differentiation. Erdogan is, he's not, the most popular of leaders. He's not popular as a leader even inside European countries. People are uncomfortable with him. So that, our position on this as an advisory would be very good enough because, like the gentleman from Styx, the travel group said, Indians are not safe there. So I think we should issue that advisory.
Yeah, somehow India is very reticent in doing these things. But Mr. Goyal, I want to come back to you and ask, sometimes we see this fervor when there is conflict at its peak. We've seen this in the past. Let's say Galwan is an example or Maldives is an example. But then when the conflict subsides, these are not very long-term attitudinal changes in Indian public. Do you think this will sustain or it will blow over as it sometimes does?
Look, Shivani, it's not a question of India, Pakistan, India, Turkey or India, Azerbaijan. It's a question for the world conscious because India is fighting against terrorism. And first thing they did was they destroyed the terrorist training grounds and centers. So that means the world must identify the countries that are supporting terrorism.
Second, I'm sorry I'm interrupting you. Let's forget what the world does. Sir, I'm sorry I'm interrupting you. Let's forget what the world does. The world will do what it does. I'm asking you about Indians. Do Indians in the long term care enough about the countries who take an anti-India or a stand inimical to Indian interest? That is what we need to ask ourselves.
Indians have definitely done that. Our Indian chamber was the first statement to boycott Maldives was issued by me, and after that there was a complete boycott of Maldives, and till today they have not reached that level which they were. I mean, tourism to Maldives from India has forever gone down by more than 50%. It is no longer the preferred destination. People are choosing Sri Lanka, people are choosing Mauritius. There are a lot of island states around the world. Even our Andaman Nicobar have become more popular. So what I'm saying is that we have to make a beginning. Those days when India could take it lying down are over. And ever since the Modi government has come, we want to do tit for tat. And our Prime Minister has made it very clear that any act of terror will be considered as an act of war. And we will again hit. And our armaments, our BrahMos missiles, I mean, they have proved stronger than any other weaponry, whether it is American or it is Chinese or it is Turkish or anything.
Right.
None of, the systems that we had, thanks to our support by Russia, that the defense system we had, they were not able to penetrate. So we must identify our friends. We should work, do more business and more tourism to, as rightly said, to Armenia, to Russia, to all these countries who have been supporting us, and we must boycott the countries which are against our national interest.
Okay.
Our forces are fighting on the border, and it is the job of every patriotic citizen to support the armed forces by boycotting those who are fueling the, ammunition of the enemy.
Yes. Ambassador Prabhudeval is also joining us. Sir, thanks a lot for your time. What do you think could be appropriate responses from India, both subtle, overt and, not so overt, given how Turkey has behaved during this conflict?
Well, First of all, thanks for having me on your show. You know, India has been extremely nice with Turkey.
Yeah.
You would recall that when there was an earthquake in Turkey last year, India was among the first countries to send relief supplies, and our operation was named Operation Dost.
Yes.
This we had done despite the fact that Pakistan had been consistently supported by Turkey. Turkey had been supporting Pakistan all along in the context of Kashmir. And all the statements that the Turkish government was making, for instance, at the General Assembly or at the OIC meetings, included references to Kashmir, exactly in line with what the Pakistanis wanted. But we overlooked that and we said that our belief is Vasudev Kutumbakam, the world is one family, and because the people of Turkey need our help, therefore we will give this particular relief consignment. And we were very, very earnest. Now, what has Turkey done? Turkey has sent warfare related equipment. It has sent arms and ammunition to Pakistan at a time when we certainly didn't want it to do so. It has overruled all our objections. It has gone all the way to help Pakistan. So what should we do? Every Indian citizen must make it a point to boycott Turkey, as also China. These are the two main villains who are ganging up with Pakistan against us.
What about the
Every
Indian state?
citizen.
What about the
Pardon?
Indian state? What is the Indian state going to do, diplomatically or otherwise?
Well, I don't know what the government of India will do. It could consider even downsizing the mission that we have in Ankara. It could ask the Turks to downsize their mission. But certainly there could be some action taken in terms of, say, for instance, blocking Turkish news sites or impeding Indian tourism to Turkey. You know, tourists from India are a big source of revenue for Turkey. And there could be steps taken to discourage tourists from India from going to Turkey. There could be various steps. Nothing is beyond the realm of what is possible. Now, it is up to each citizen of India. Indian citizens have the key. They must decide not to go to Turkey. They must decide that they will avoid buying Chinese products. You know, I for one, when I want to buy something, I always take a look. I make inquiries. Where is it made? And if it is made in China, I make a conscious decision not to buy it. So that it is the duty of every citizen.
No, fair
Of course,
enough.
the government
Fair enough.
will take appropriate action.
Tara Kata wants to come in very quickly. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, just a quick point. You know, you could raise the fact that Turkish human rights record is pathetic. He's just imprisoned his main political rival. Why can't we raise concerns?
Why don't we? Is what I'm trying to get
we
at.
should. Okay, yeah. Why don't we is a different issue. That's with the hands of the government. But what I'm trying to say, Shivani, is that you can. There are many issues, things that you can do to annoy the state, which is constantly preaching at us. That is, I mean, they dismal human rights record. So that's just a thought. But I'm pretty sure something will come up. This foreign secretary and the they are not the kinds to just overlook. Neither the foreign minister.
Okay, let's wait and see what India's response is going to be in the manner of its choosing and at the time of its choosing, as they say. But Rajat, I do want to ask you the political question here. You know, I think Ambassador Prabhu Dayal kind of hit at the nerve of the issue. You know, we also have this tendency to want to be Vishwaguru, as they say, the Vishwaguru syndrome. We want to be nice to everybody. We believe in this world is one family, when that's not true, practically. Do you think it's time to be more pragmatic?
See, philosophically, Vishwaguru lays out the broad contours of our engagement with the world. But if the world wants to point a gun at us, what do? There is no Gandhigiri that is going to, get reflected from this country at this day and age. This is a different country with a firm, steely resolve. And let me tell you, see, where did Turkey go wrong? And I'm not coming from a very jingoistic standpoint here. When the Pahalgam attack happened, there are very, very few countries which did not condemn the terror attack. Erdogan was one individual, a leader of a country who did not till date condemn the Pahalgam terror attack. That is going below the belt.
But why are we surprised? No, Rajat,
No,
why are we surprised? His position on Kashmir is absolutely clear.
No, it's not about, it's a terror attack. It could be out of humanity, he should have come out and said something. If it is so black and white, then I think it therefore calls, we have to further show our resolve in that case. And this is why I'm saying, I'm not pointing into every other country who might not have come out in our support or perhaps doesn't understand the Kashmir issue. Maybe a lot of Americans don't understand, as a matter of fact. CNN, Fox doesn't understand. The POTUS doesn't understand the sensitivities and the nuances involved on Kashmir. That is fine. It does. I'm not saying that we should stop going to America for that and go to that extreme end. Here, Turkey is a sinister actor in our scheme of things, and Turkey has to be called out. Therefore,
So no more Operation Dost?
100% not. Why should we send our medical team below the rubble and try and find people who the moment they get out of hospital are going to train their guns and put oil on their drones to be sent and murder us? Why on earth?
Well, the question goes to all.
They are sending, look at their strategic approach. Their Bakhtiyar drones are also being sent to Bangladesh deliberately. Till date, they did not sign a deal. But as soon as, our relations turned sour, Turkey found an opportunity to come in and send out their drones to both Bangladesh and to equip Pakistan with it. Do your business. If you want to do strategic stuff with us, we will show you what your auqat is, in Hindi words.
Okay. Talking about business, ties, neighbors and more, I do request our guests to just hold on with me for a couple of minutes because we've got other problems coming up as well. Now, Bangladesh's chief advisor, Muhammad Yunus, has again made a remark on northeastern states of India months after he called the region landlocked. During the meeting with the Deputy Speaker of Nepal's House of Representatives, who is currently visiting Bangladesh, Yunus proposed a comprehensive economic integration plan encompassing Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan and the Seven Sisters, referring to the northeastern Indian states but not mentioning India. There should be an integrated economic plan for Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan and the Seven Sisters, he said, referring to these states, and we have more to gain together than apart. This is again absolutely needless needling as far as India's integrity and sovereign integrity is concerned. There is a reason for India to worry. Clearly, China and Bangladesh ties have grown further under Yunus's leadership. It wasn't the same under the previous regime. The ties between the two countries are only growing further. $40 billion investment via Belt and Road Initiative. China has invested heavily in infrastructure, including Paira Port, Padma Bridge Rail Link and energy and connectivity projects. This port modernization in interest in Matarbari Deep Sea Port shows Beijing's growing naval footprint. China helped build the BNS submarine base near Cox's Bazar, raising concerns of future Chinese submarine access. China seeks to develop Lal Mornihat Air Base, just 40 kilometers from India's Siliguri corridor, enabling possible ISR ops or forward deployment. China supplies 78% of Bangladesh's arms, including submarines, corvettes, tanks, frigates, missile boats, jets, SAMs and UAVs. Beijing has also supplied surface-to-air missile systems and UAVs, further cementing their defense ties. The Bangladesh army has been trained and equipped with Chinese tanks. Bilateral trade between the two countries hit $25 billion in 2023, heavily skewed in China's favor. So, is this really the reason behind the recent anti-India agenda by the Bangladeshi chief? Listen into what he said.
আশেপাশের দেশগুলোর সঙ্গে সংযুক্ত, যে কারণে নেপালের কথা বললাম, ভুটানের কথা বললাম, সেভেন সিস্টার্সের কথা বললাম, সবার জন্য হৃৎপিণ্ড একটাই, নেপালের জন্য হৃৎপিণ্ডই নেই, কাজে আমাদের হৃৎপিণ্ড দিয়ে তাকে চালতে হবে। আমরা তাকে সেই সংযুক্ত করতে চাই, এটা আমাদেরও লাভ, তাদেরও লাভ, আমাদেরও লাভ। এটা এমন নয় যে তাদের মেহেরবানি করি, মেহেরবানির বিষয় না। এই হৃৎপিণ্ড যদি সংযুক্ত হয় সেও লাভবান হবে, আমরাও লাভবান হব। ভুটান যদি এটার সঙ্গে সংযুক্ত হয় সেও লাভবান হবে, আমরাও লাভবান হব। সেভেন সিস্টার যদি এটার সঙ্গে সংযুক্ত হয় তারাও লাভবান হবে, আমরাও লাভবান হব। এই হৃৎপিণ্ডকে বাদ দিয়ে চললে যারা এটাতে বাদ দেবে তারা ক্ষতিগ্রস্ত হবে।
Right, our guests continue to be with us. Tarakarta, let me begin with you. What to do about Bangladesh now? We're getting surrounded with anti-India sentiment.
beginning to think this man is losing it. I'm sorry, I can't think of, but that's on the lighter side. The Chinese presence, like those excellent data which you just produced, that shows the Chinese footprint, okay. But this also recently, if you remember, during their Independence Day, when where they had this huge drone show, 2,600 drones or something, all organized by the Chinese embassy. So the Chinese ambassador there is extremely active. And whether this perhaps this is a new wolf warrior in the neighborhood, but this is an extremely provocative, deliberate statement to get you on the, to get you, and of course he's banned the Awami League on the other side, and that as well. So it's amazing why this man does this. I mean, that it doesn't make sense even domestically, because the students who from the separate group, they are into politics. There's a lot of protest going on. There's an economic fallout, and in the middle of this, he talks about the Seven Sisters. He did this when he went to China also, as you recall. But during his visit to China, he didn't really get anything in terms of hard economic aid. What he wanted, he didn't get. He got nothing. So China will wait till this country stabilizes, and meanwhile, I would not jump to the conclusion that this is a Chinese ploy. I would put it down to Mr. Yunus himself, because he has amazing mischief-making capabilities.
Prabhu Dayal, what do you think? Do we need to change our stance towards Bangladesh as well? Or could that be even more risky? I know we have constraints, but again, we cannot have, a country like Bangladesh that was created because of the Indian Army's help, say things like separating the Seven Sisters from the Indian mainland.
Well, very frankly, the present regime in Bangladesh seems to be deliberately forgetting what they owe to India. Bangladesh would never have come into existence as a separate country had it not been for the very decisive role played by India. But Muhammad Yunus and his regime are totally oblivious of that. They are trying to make people forget what Bangladesh owes to India. Now, India has been very consistent in being a good neighbor to Bangladesh. We have assisted them in every possible manner. But now, the policies of the present regime have to make us rethink. And I'm sure this is happening. You can't be nice to a country and have the regime of that country being obnoxious towards you. That is precisely what Bangladesh is. Now, as regards the Chinese, they are hostile to us. And the Chinese have always followed this policy: my enemy's enemy is my friend. So Pakistan is their friend. Bangladesh's present regime is their friend. And the Chinese will play a very dubious role in fomenting animosity between Bangladesh and India. The Seven Sisters reference to which you referred is certainly one such reference. But China has consistently followed the policy of the string of pearls. And in that, Bangladesh figures. China wants to develop maritime facilities in Bangladesh and use them against whom? Certainly against India's interests. And the upsurge in the visit of ships of the Chinese Navy to Bangladeshi ports in recent months after the ouster of Sheikh Hasina is a pointer in the direction in which things are going. India is on high alert, and it should be. Because as I see it, the relationship has nosedived in the recent months.
Rajat, it would be easy to simplify this as, China's growing influence because, China can pump money, it has those expansionist designs, it always has a tendency to kind of, for lack of a better word, buy support or buy assistance in areas where it wants to reach. But do you think in Bangladesh's case, in Pakistan's case, it is just that? Or do you think there is a deep-lying Islamist ideology that is a breeding ground for this?
Yes, to a great extent, it is that Islamist aspiration which is, gushing out right now. For a fairly long time under the former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's tenure, this this aspect of the slippage into a very non-liberal polity was arrested. But what we are seeing now is that those pent-up forces that were there, the jihadist forces that were there, are all coming to the surface. And fortunately, unfortunately, this chief advisor draws his entire power, or whatever you want to call, out of these people, these ultra-Islamist jihadist people. That is his support base, actually. Let him ride on this. It is his honeymoon period. Let us not disturb him during his honeymoon phase, but he will come to reality very soon. And I salute Mamata Banerjee that she never allowed, the Teesta treaty to be solved to its finality, and she kept insisting the fact that we have to be protecting our interests. And she went against Prime Minister Modi also when Sheikh Hasina level talks were happening, and she ensured that the interests of West Bengal are put forward. Now we must go back to Teesta deliberations, open up all pending issues, including Brahmaputra for that matter. So let's buy time on this. Bangladesh is one issue. I know I've served in the Northeast as advisor to two chief ministers there. I can tell you Bangladesh is a case which will fall into its own pit the way they are trying to dig this deeper hole by the day. Their economy is tanking. We need to use our influence with the White House and ensure that whatever experiments that were being done during Ambassador Haas's tenure are all undone. It doesn't get the benefit of a least developing country, and it can export garments into Europe and to US. We have to use all of our back channel diplomacy and tools that are at our disposal and ensure that Bangladesh is hung dry. This man is not even a democratically elected leader. He's largely a despot sitting there. He has no business to sit on that chair. And we have to ensure that our influence around the world needs to address this issue once and for all. So that's where I come from. I still believe it's a problem in the making, but not a problem as of now.
Okay, let's wait and see. But Dr. Goyal, this is again bringing back, Mr. Goyal, it's bringing me back to the question I asked. We need from Indians too more sustained action, sustained pressure, whether it comes to industry, trade, economy, travel, and just the Indians' mindset overall towards countries that keep threatening our national integrity and sovereignty.
No, I think Indians have started doing that. I mean, apart from travel and tourism, who's boycotted Azerbaijan and Turkey, I was just reading on the social media that the Stone Dealers Association, Marble Dealers Association of Jodhpur have cancelled 5,000 crore, import order from Azerbaijan and Turkey, for marble. So, I mean, people are coming back. I read in another social media that shops like Zara and all, who have sections on Turkey and Bangladesh garments, are being protested. And moment people see that this garment is made in Bangladesh or this, they should not buy it. And they should force these departmental stores not to do that. Similarly, Amazon is selling, mugs and, this flags of Pakistan. We should protest. We should, today, I think the government of the present time is a government that can force things. And they cannot take things lying down. And this has been proved, again and again. And I think in this unfortunate incident in Pahalgam, I think at least the world has known that India is ready for action.
Okay. Sir, hold on. Just stay with your thought. I have some breaking updates coming in. This is on Operation Sindoor. More details from the government. It says the rise of Atmanirbhar innovation in national security has helped in a big way. The PIB has issued a statement saying Indian Air Force bypassed and jammed Pakistan's Chinese-supplied air defense systems, completing the mission in just 23 minutes, demonstrating India's technological edge. Akash, my colleague, is also joining us with more. Akash, we've been breaking down a lot of these weapons and how indigenous systems, including the Akash Tir, were really the real heroes. Even legacy weapons, vintage weapons like the LD-70 guns, etc. And the Indian government providing more context to all of the weaponry that has been used by India. But importantly, telling the world including countries like Pakistan and China and others, that our systems are superior.
Right, and in fact, it has been mentioned from day one that how Raksha Mantri, in fact, initially mentioned that quality matters. And when he was, mentioning about quality, what he meant was that India is using sophisticated systems like Akash Tir and S-400, while on the other hand, we have Chinese systems that did not work at that time. Indian Air Force, in fact, jammed those systems and, in fact, bypassed those systems, which are, mainly the HQ-9 air defense systems. Then we have ANZA and, Menpeds as well. Their short-range air defense system, that is FN-90. And in fact, in HQ-9 family, in fact, we have a variety of systems that they have employed for the air defense of Pakistan. But all these systems, in fact, got failed and were jammed by our armed forces when they carried out these strikes, not just once, but in fact, multiple times. We know that how initial strikes were carried out on 7th of May. But after that, we saw that how on 8th, when they attempted, we retaliated and then carried out several sort of strikes. And on 10th as well, a retaliatory strike was carried out on different military installations, specifically at Noor Khan and at Karachi cantonment area, where we had destroyed their air defense. So this particular, operation has somewhere proved, the capability, of course, of Indian Armed Forces, and then on the other side, the low-quality air defense systems of Pakistan that are mainly from China, and how the systems got failed, and in fact Indian weapons and systems destroyed these air defense systems.
All right, thanks a lot for joining us, Akash. I've got some more breaking updates coming in, more in context of what India can do in the realm of soft power and more when it comes to sending a statement to allies of Pakistan. Now, Jawaharlal Nehru University, one of India's premier universities, has released a statement that due to national security considerations, the MOU between JNU and İnönü University of Turkey stands suspended until further notice. We were discussing exactly this. What are the actions that India as a state, as a country, as a people can take when it comes to making themselves heard? My colleague Pallavi is joining us with more on this. Pallavi, what more are you learning?
No, this MOU was signed between İnönü University in Western Turkey and Jawaharlal Nehru University, and essentially they spoke about collaboration as far as research, student exchange, that kind of a program. Now, what we had been told, of course, by JNU University sources completely is that because of the situation, because of the Turkish involvement as far as Pakistan terror attack on India is concerned, it is a question of nationalism, it's a question of national solidarity, and to show that solidarity, India, JNU has decided to snap its MOU with İnönü. This is important because it also shows the thinking within the section of the institutions. There was no pressure on JNU, that's what we've been told. But this is a suo decision which has been taken by the JNU University.
All right, Pallavi, I do thank you for joining us with more updates on that. Possibly more such action will follow. Independent action will follow. Now, amidst this entire India-Pakistan conflict and what are the global reactions and responses coming to it, I also earlier spoke to Einat Wilf, Dr. Einat Wilf, who's former Israeli MP and co-author of The War of Return, to understand why Israel and India often find themselves in the same block. Dr. Einat Wilf, former Israeli MP and co-author of the book, The War of Return, is joining us. I do thank you for your time, Dr. Wilf. Let me begin by asking you, a lot of appreciation in the global community of India's response to Pakistan, particularly the drone swarm and missile attack, a lot like what Israelis have faced from Palestine and Hamas. Your first thoughts of what you know and what you've heard and what you make of the Indian success in this regard?
Well, I think we already have a step forward in what was clearly building for a long time, a cooperation between Israel and India, both in arms development and in strategic development, and thinking about how to fight not just terrorism, but to fight ideologies that are organized, in the case of Pakistan, in an entire country, in the case of the Palestinians, an entire people, who are engaged essentially in ideologies that seek not to build for themselves, but are more focused on destroying what others have built. And I think we're seeing the making of what I believe will be in the coming decade a stronger and stronger partnership.
In your book, The War of Return, you do talk about how this whole Palestinian cause of the return to their land is basically a front for the destruction of Israel. I don't want to compare the two situations completely, but in India, we do know that the very reason of being for Pakistan is an anti-India sentiment. They talk of jihad, their army talks of jihad, and how the two people are completely different. In that sense, we also do feel that it is not so much about the Kashmir issue that Pakistan tries to talk about in the international realm. What is really at the bottom of it is a hate for India. How do you see this?
So certainly on what I'm an expert on, which is the Palestinian issue, everything that they've ever mentioned, the issue of what they call refugee return, but none of the people who are called refugees are actually refugees. They do not possess a legal right of to settle inside Israel, but they claim they do. What I've discovered in my research is that these are all proxies for the ideology that is at the core of it, which refuses to accept that the Jewish people as a people have the right to self-determination and to a state in any part of the land of Israel. It's not about it being smaller or bigger or including that territory or this territory. It's about a complete denial that has also basic in Islamist thought and rejectionism that unfortunately also gets support sometimes from bizarre Western ideas that just denies completely what used to be understood as the obvious right of the Jewish people to self-determination and engages in a constant process of erasure, erasing that the Jews are a people, that they have a connection to the land of Israel, and like you mentioned, using a lot of issues like refugees who are not refugees and return, which is not a right, as proxies for that greater ideology.
Do you feel India faces the same in some ways?
Again, I'm no expert on India, but what I've seen in my research is that you see these themes of Islamism, of rejection of other peoples, of the rights of other peoples, of the idea that people basically have a connection to a land, a history there, and therefore have the right to self-determination. I do know that India and Israel, certainly as democracies who are threatened, which is not something you have a lot in the world today. One of the problems we have with a lot of Western democracies is that they actually forgot what it's like to be a threatened democracy. And this is something that both India and Israel share and understand. And I think that's the reason that we're seeing the elements of a stronger partnership and alliance being built.
What is at the core of the Western ignorance or insistence to deny some of these ideologies that you talk about? You know, Israel has faced this a little bit in the past. India continues to face this even from allies, co-allies like US, for example. Why is it that the Western world continues to deny some of these threats that Israel and India both face?
It's certainly a troubling question that I've struggled with. Some of it is laziness, forgetfulness. I'm often sadly amused, for example, when Europeans enjoying their peaceful lives today forget that the EU, the current peace in Europe, was built on the utter and complete destruction of Nazi Germany, Nazi ideology, the occupation and partition of Germany, the displacement of people, the taking of land. They somehow think that it was all about enlightened ideas of negotiations. So I think people have become lazy, forgetful, and for many people, they can't even conceive anymore that there are forces in this world that have truly annihilationist ideologies, that people are truly committed to those ideologies, that they're willing to fight and sacrifice. You know, a lot of people find it hard to believe that Palestinians are truly committed as a people to the non-existence of the Jewish state. And I always tell people, stop being such neo-colonialists. Listen to them. Give them the respect of taking them at their word. They're telling you that this is their goal. So just take them as serious people who know what they're doing. And I think the West also has a bit of this neo-colonial attitude that refuses to actually take a lot of these actors at their word.
Yes, you're right. And we talk about this in India quite a bit because, if the speech from the Pakistani army chief, Asim Munir, hadn't happened, just for your context as well, a few weeks before the Pahalgam attack, where he talked about how India and Pakistan are two different ideologies, Muslims and Hindus cannot live together. He espoused the entire two-nation theory again. Had that not happened, there would have been a denial of the core ideology that fuels terrorism in Kashmir and via Pakistan in other parts of India as well. From college campuses to the government statements themselves, you've seen how the denial of this annihilation tendency and ideology, or terrorism, in simple words, just goes on and on and on. Is it because there is a nexus of political and other interests, or is this, as you say, just plain ignorance alone?
It's a combination. I've actually invented a word for it in the book. I call it West-plaining. It's when Western diplomats and journalists and academics explain away, in our case, for example, what Palestinians clearly say, which they find unpalatable, so they explain it away. They will say, yeah, they're saying that, but they don't really mean it. It's just bluster. It's a negotiating tactic. And we say, look, they say it, they mean it, they act on it, take it seriously. Yeah. For me, I found that it's a combination, like I said, of laziness, because if they really had to acknowledge how serious those ideologies are, they would have to work much harder, I think, than they're willing to fight them and to defeat them. So it's easier to West-plane them and to ignore them. And I sometimes think that they find it convenient, yes. Let the sides just fight and, kind of outsource this fighting to other people rather than have to deal with it.
My final question to you, do you think India will get the kind of support that it needs from global allies, the US particularly? Do you think they will come around to understanding the threat of terrorism that India faces? This is not about a particular piece of land. It always starts like that, but really that's not what it is truly about.
In my experience, and that's the benefit of America being America, it's separated from the world by two vast oceans. It could afford to allow, as it did, by the way, in the past, to allow wars to erupt and to stay out and maybe just intervene at the very last moment. They have the benefits of that geography. They're less likely to get it until it hits them at home, which, when it has, they did take action. Yes. Not necessarily effective, but they did take action. But again, I think this is the reason why I'm a big believer in an Israeli-Indian alliance for yes. the coming decades, because I think we get it. And at the end of the day, we will have to rely on ourselves. I think there is a lot of thinking going on in Israel on how to rebuild the Israeli arms industry, which has been subservient to American interests for many decades. And I think, again, here, an Israeli-Indian cooperation in both the development of arms, of military strategy, is going to be very important in the coming decades.
Yes, in fact, even in India, the whole Make in India effort when it comes to armed forces and the defense forces has also really shown as far as Operation Sindoor is concerned. Dr. Ira Dwelf, I do thank you for joining us and just, putting it into context why the Israeli-India connect is so strong, because the two countries perhaps face exactly the same existential threat.
Network 18 is now the clear leader in digital media, with 55% more users on native platforms and social media than Times Internet. Network 18, the undisputed leader of news networks, way ahead of the times. Co-powered by. This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
That was a fantastic discussion going on there, and I wish I could have joined you because it was really, really insightful. But we're joined by Lauren Dagan-Amos, who's an India specialist. She's a foreign policy expert. Thank you very much for joining me. There are many, Ms. Amos, there are many who are saying that if India was in such a strong position against Pakistan, why did it agree to what is effectively a ceasefire without preconditions? That is what is being said here in our country. First, what is your assessment of the Indian military action and its subsequent decision to agree to an understanding, so to speak, that has led to a ceasefire?
So thank you so much for having me here. So it's a complex answer, but it's very straight. I don't think that India went to a ceasefire without agreements, without conditions. Okay, as you can see, this crisis, it's not the usual crisis between India and Pakistan. It's a strategic shift that India did in the foreign policy, in the strategy, defense policy. India responds not only with military efforts, but with a clear message. Terrorism will no longer be treated in a separate issue. It's an act of war, and it's very important. It's this very big shift in the foreign policy and defense policy that Narendra Modi brought to India. Even now, we can see in the de-escalation, India is showing that it's not a weakness; it is strength. On India terms, I think India went from this crisis very strong, actually.
Very strong. Well, there is a lobby here that says that India should have signed they should have dragged Pakistan to the table and signed a formal ceasefire agreement in writing. How realistic and responsible is this observation?
I think that if India wants to be a responsible country, which is, she needs to do something with the Sindoor agreement and the Shimla agreement. It's very important because these agreements was the basic talking with India and Pakistan during a crisis time. And it's very important that you should go back to the table, and you will see what can you bring now, which kind of new agreements about the Indus agreement and Shimla agreement. So before the ceasefire, I think these two agreements are very important.
My final question, do you see parallels between India's action after Pahalgam attack and what Israel did after October 7?
I think that India and Israel, not for the first time, are dealing with extreme radicalism, Islamic. And I think India and Israel should do a deeper relationship in the security issues and the policy issues and the economy issues, because they are dealing with the same threats. October 7, it's for India, it's like a Mumbai attack, right. And like 9/11, and like you did deal now with the Kashmir issue. And I think for both of the country need to do much deeper a relationship now, because it's very important, and we can do better for each other. We can learn from India, and India can learn from us in the field of battle, of course. As you can see in this combat, a lot of things that Israel and India went together to do things was successfully showed the means and the prove ourselves, the relationship prove ourselves in this combat field.
Well, thank you, Ms. Amos, for joining us here on CNN News 18 with your comments, very valued comments. Thank you very much.
This is News 18 Network. India's India's largest news network.
Namaste, Jai Hind, and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand, and we continue our focus on Operation Sindoor. It's just been paused, it's still on, but Bharat has moved to a different level of offensive. The military action perhaps has stopped, but the non-kinetic options continue to be exercised. But there's a different war altogether, viewers, that we are still fighting. This war is of information. This war is of seeding doubt in the minds of not just the global international community against Bharat, but also in the minds of Bharatiya itself. And of course, there are those Mir Bakis within, those who will work with the enemy or perhaps feed on to what the on what the enemy is offering. But in this case, we thought we should dwell on these aspects. The fact that the amount of disinformation, misinformation that's doing the rounds, how do we sift through that? How do we continue to believe in Bharat's Sena, Bharat's forces, Bharat's political disposition and Bharat's intent that it is an act of terror, and that is why it's a war on terror? Why should Pahalgam